Hello, welcome back to Luke's English Podcast. In this episode, you can join me as we go on a visit to a wonderful museum in the centre of Paris. It's the Medieval Museum. In fact, this is it. It's the Medieval Museum episode that you might have heard me talking about over the last 9 months or so. I think it's been about 9 months since I actually filmed this. So finally, 9 months later, here we are. 9 months, around the same time it takes to make a human baby. That's the same amount of time it's taken for me to actually make this episode. So this is the Medieval Museum, and in this one you're going to join me and my friends Amber and Paul, and in fact Paul's brother Kyle, on a trip to this fantastic museum in the centre of Paris. It's called the Clooney Museum, and it is a museum of medieval art and medieval history. So a kind of history-based episode for you this time. The period is the Middle Ages, medieval times in Europe. This museum is devoted to this time period, and it contains all sorts of interesting things, sculptures, paintings, furnishings, goldsmithery, illuminated manuscripts, glassware, tapestries, and weapons. These are all the things that can be seen in this museum, all dating back from the Middle Ages. If you don't know what the Middle Ages is, if you don't know what the medieval period is, you will find out in this episode. You're going to get some history lessons. So Amber is a registered tour guide in Paris. She knows loads of stuff about the history of Paris, and this is one of her favourite museums. A bit like when the three of us went to the Louvre in episode number 753. Amber took us on a trip around the Louvre, showing us some really interesting things and telling us about them. It's a similar thing, but this time with video, so you can actually see the stuff that was happening at the time. Now, I recorded this using an action cam, a bit like a GoPro. It was attached to my t-shirt. I had it sort of rigged up to myself, so you'll get my point of view. And I hope you can see everything okay. You won't get the full BBC TV documentary production values. It's all filmed on an action camera. It took me a long time to edit this one together. Part of the reason for that was because I had some technical issues with the microphones. Each one of us had a different microphone recording our voices while we were doing this, and at some point Amber's microphone dies and Paul's microphone dies, and I ended up having to use the audio recorded from the camera itself, which was not perfect. So later on in the video the sound quality gets a bit dodgy, but actually for the most part it's fine, and I think that you're going to really enjoy this. But I do hope that you can understand everything that you can hear. There are moments when we have to whisper. When we're in certain parts of the museum, we had to whisper. So you might need to turn up the volume a little bit. I've edited the audio to make it okay. You could consider using the automatic subtitles on YouTube where you're watching this, because they are generally very accurate. And so for the moments that perhaps are hard to understand, you could switch on the subtitles to see what we're saying. That is basically it. I will now let you enjoy a walk around this wonderful medieval museum, have a bit of a history lesson, and enjoy some bits of funny nonsense at the same time, and meet Paul's brother Kyle, who is a professional footballer in England. All of that in this episode. So let's get started, and here we go. Paul, hello. What's the situation?
Situation is we're stood outside a museum in Paris, in a lovely park over here. So the view, if you're watching this, is of the museum itself, which I don't know what that is. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a museum to start with. I imagine we're going to find out from Amber in a minute. If you are watching this, Luke, can you turn around a sec?
Turn around. So yeah, you got this beautiful picturesque view here behind everyone.
Yep.
It looks beautiful, lovely garden with flowers in it. But just turn round, and here's the reality.
It's just a bin.
A dirty bin.
But it's helping to keep Paris clean for the Olympics coming up.
Yeah.
Okay. And we are joined. It's not just Amber and Paul on the podcast.
Amber, Paul, but also
Kyle.
Kyle, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Who's my little brother. So you will have two clueless tailors.
Yeah.
on the podcast today.
Two uncultured, clueless tailors.
Because, so, Amber, what is this museum?
This is the Museum of the Moyen Age, the medieval museum.
Okay.
So we're going back in time.
So the medieval period.
It's the medieval period.
What's the difference between medieval and Middle Ages? Because Moyen Age translates to Middle Ages, but you said medieval, so I'm confused now. I'm already confused.
Yeah.
1 minute into this, and I've got no idea.
Just the title of the museum.
Let me tell you, I love this museum, but there are plenty of holes in my knowledge about it and the Moyen Age. I think the problem is when you say Middle Age, it sounds like we're talking about someone in their 40s and not like the 1200s.
Well,
do you see what I mean?
yeah.
Like if you say the medieval museum, we know what we're talking about. If I said the Middle Age,
the Middle Age Museum.
just like
To be fair, well, there are 3 middle-aged people going to the
It is
museum.
called the Clooney Museum. I was thinking maybe it's like a middle-aged American actor who drinks lots of coffee. It's the George Clooney Museum. It's about middle-aged people. No, it's not that though, is it?
no.
The Middle Ages. What are the Middle Ages, guys? Do you know?
It's at the time when everyone died in their middle age. That was the life expectancy.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's why it's called the Middle Age.
Because everyone got to 45 years old and then hit their middle age, and then that's it.
I don't know why it's called. It's good because I don't know what was before the Middle Ages and what's after the Middle Ages. Where are we now? Are we in the?
We're underneath a very noisy parakeet.
And he's green. Look at him. He looks amazing.
That's a ring-necked parakeet.
All right, Attenborough.
They're quite a new species in this part of the world. You have them in London as well. Yeah. Anyway, so when is the Middle Ages, or when was the Middle Ages? Kyle, do you know?
No.
No idea at all. Sort of recent past, like a long time ago.
Long time ago, I'd say.
Paul,
That's a great question. When is there? I didn't realise there was a specific.
generally,
But they're going to have to change it as well. Because the Middle Ages
it's not going to be the middle.
going to be the middle, and then how long is the end going to be? They're expecting us to not last that much longer.
As time progresses, the
Yeah.
middle is going to move forwards as well.
Yeah, so
Eventually,
we might be part of the Middle
this will be
Ages.
the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. This is why I was asking why it's called the Middle Age, because if you take like the length of humanity, it's nowhere near the middle. We're at the end, like in terms of how long humans have been around.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know what the dates are. I've got no idea.
I've got 2 questions here. The dates for the Middle Ages, and secondly, why it's called the Middle Ages, because it's not in the middle of when humans arrived. But so, Amber, you're the designated...
Okay, I'm the designated teacher. Oh, the pressure is intense. When we talk about the Middle Ages, or any of these sort of most areas in history, people don't think about themselves living like, oh, I'm living in the Middle Ages, or I'm living in the Dark Ages. It's something we give to people afterwards. So when we're going into the museum today, everything's modern. Like, these people were making things which were like the most modern possible, and they were like, this is amazing, we're at the cutting edge of art and craft. But we've come to think about the Middle Ages as a period from around the 1000s, 11, 12, 13, 40. It's kind of quite nebulous. And it was kind of considered in a very negative way by historians, because there was this like loss of the greatness of antiquity, and then before the Renaissance, where everything kind of comes back and everyone's like, oh wow, we're brilliant again. And so there was this sort of very negative attitude towards the Middle Ages, where they were like, it's a dark period where knowledge and ideas were lost. But I would disagree with that. So people of the Middle Ages were not thinking, we're medieval people. They were like, we're modern cutting edge people.
There is the word, it does sound like evil, like medieval, we're half evil, like the Latin root of the word medi, like midday. Midi is in the middle, so medieval sounds like you're half evil and half...
Or they're right in the middle of evil, so like the purest centre of evil. I don't know how much evil there was in the medieval period. There was probably a lot of cruelty. You go back in time, the further you go back, the crueler it becomes, right? So probably in the medieval period, people were probably doing horrible things to each other, terrible forms of punishment,
torture,
no human rights at all. But anyway, we're getting distracted. So Kyle, how much did you understand of what Amber said just now?
Yeah, it was beautifully articulated, but I think you lost me very, very early on. But I'm very interested to go round, and I do love listening. But It's almost when you read a book and then someone says, "How was the book?"
And you're like,
And all I can say is, "Yeah, it was good." I can't give you any more than that.
The cover was amazing.
I'm gonna have a really good time, but if you ask me in a week what I remember, I might struggle.
Amber's a great tour guide, though. I remember almost everything that we did at the Louvre together.
Do you?
Like every time people talk to me about the Louvre, like foreign people, I'm like, "Well, have you done? Have you? You know?" And
Did you see the painting, famous painting by Jericho of the
the other Mona Lisa, which is better.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you have to have quite a good memory, really, to remember all the details. It's quite...
I wish I did.
Impressive, yeah.
Sadly, I don't. And I mean, I'm always coming across books that I've read and annotated and thinking, oof, news to me. I've completely forgotten this.
So essentially then, the Middle Ages, we're talking about 1,000 years ago, right? So from around about 1,000 years AD to about 1400.
When did we consider that we left the Middle Ages? What happened?
The Renaissance.
What was the Renaissance?
And what was that?
So the Renaissance starts in Italy.
Rebirth.
And it's the rebirth, and it's the rebirth.
So it's not a baguette, because in the in the boulangerie near where I live, they call it La Renaissance, and that's the name of the baguette. But it's not.
Not
So it's a
baguette.
movement in culture, in history. Okay.
Cultural movement, not in food. I mean, food.
It's interesting that they called a baguette the Renaissance. I mean, it's a bit pretentious, isn't it?
A little bit.
This is Paris.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
the Renaissance. The Renaissance is a movement that starts in Italy, and it's linked with humanism, but it's essentially looking back to everything that was put to one side from like Greek and Roman culture. So like the history, the art, the ideas, the philosophy, all these ideas were kind of put to one side because of Christianity. So, you know, Greeks and Romans have got lots and lots of gods, and then the Christians then come and take over, and they kind of put all of the things that Greeks and Romans thought were important to one side. Antiquity. 1,000 years later, Roman Catholics, the Christians, everyone's established. But the Italians, if you go to Italy today, there's loads of Roman stuff, isn't there? So they start looking back at what people were thinking and believing and all that sort of ideas, and it starts becoming more and more popular, and it starts in Italy and spreads all around Europe, mainly through war. And so, you see this revolution in thinking and art and stuff like that, and they call it the Renaissance.
Okay.
Go on.
No, doesn't matter.
Really?
What are we now? We don't call ourselves now. It will be like in 100 years.
Postmodern era.
Well, I mean, we're very postmodern, aren't we?
The postmodern era.
I don't know. I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem with all titles. There's only a few times in history where people have been like, "We are," like the Enlightenment. They were saying, "We are the Enlightenment," but most times people are not saying, "Oh, we're Gothic," or "We're Moyen Âge," or "We're
They were given it
Renaissance."
afterwards. Okay.
We kind of think about it afterwards.
I don't
and
know,
say,
when I was at school, quite a lot of people were saying, "Oh, yeah, we're Gothic. Yeah, we like the Cure and smoking roll-ups and wearing Doc Martens."
some people have self-awareness.
Well, now everyone's got self-awareness, isn't it? Everyone's very self-aware.
So what we're going to see in there is...
Well, what are we going to see?
Well, we're going to see some highlights, right? So you're not going to show us the whole thing because
No.
it would take ages.
Absolutely.
So you're going to just show us a few highlights, and we're going to see some works of art.
We're going to see like the main thing that people go to see in this museum. So it's got one.
Oh, can I guess what it is?
Yes.
Is it a guillotine?
No.
Okay, that's interesting. But Amber, we did say before that we would ask these guys what they expect.
Your
What did you
face
say?
of disappointment of like, really, Paul? You didn't go.
You wanted a guillotine.
is from the Revolution.
Yeah, that's true. It's more recent, isn't
A
it?
lot more.
The guillotine's not that long ago, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, they stopped using the guillotine only recently, no?
70s.
In the 1970s.
I think they banned. I think my wife was born in the same year that they banned capital punishment here,
81.
1981.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So, anyway,
So what we're going to see?
we were going to ask these guys what they expect to see in a museum full of medieval artwork.
Well, guillotines was.
No guillotine.
No guillotine. Sorry.
Before the guillotines.
Oh yeah, way before the guillotine.
In terms of art,
Yes.
Well, anything really. Like, what might you expect? What might you?
Art or artifacts?
I was going to say like spearheads.
It's not the Bronze Age.
I don't know. Fucking. All right, give me a bit of a clue.
Well, buildings in Paris which are from the Middle Ages are this one,
Well, okay.
Notre Dame, Saint-Chapelle. If that's
Gargoyles. Oh, are we going to see something of the Notre Dame in there? Is there the statues that are around the outside or something that they've been preserved here when the fire happened?
No, not when the fire, but yes, we are going to see Notre Dame stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
What, paintings?
No, like stuff that was on it.
Oh, right.
I think.
So you're talking about statues.
Are we going to see like burnt stuff of it? No, that's not what they.
No.
Okay. Oh, is it the Jesus Christ?
The crown of thorns.
The crown of thorns.
No, we won't see that.
So we're mostly going to be seeing works of art, right? But you mentioned other things like, which I described as artefacts, which are just objects. And so these are objects that we use for certain purposes. But decorative things like art, statues, and other such things, that's what I classify as works of art. In terms of artefacts, I don't know what.
Is there like the spears on the sword, like when people were on horses and spearing each other? I don't know what that's called. You know when they'd fight each other with a long Heath Ledger was in a film, jousting, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Good a Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale. Well done. Well
As
remembered.
much as I can add to this.
You're on the right track. You're on the right track.
Oh, right, so we might see him. Okay, cool.
See?
Are we going to be on horses jousting each other?
That's how we get around the museum. We have to saddle up and get on our chainmail.
Our version of A Knight's Tale.
Because that's another thing we think of when we talk about the Middle Ages, is castles, horses, knights, armour, swords and jousting.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect, yeah.
There are three big groups. So you've got the knights, so those who fight, the knights and all those kind of people. So you're right. We've talked about another one, because we talked about Notre Dame. So those who pray,
Monks.
the monks and the nuns and all of those. And then the third one is one that you're talking about, those who work, the artisans, the peasants, the people working with things. So this is medieval society. You pray, you work, or you fight.
Isn't that the same thing nowadays? I think
Maybe,
we're pretty much fighting about praying. That's what modern society is, while everyone else drinks.
While everyone else just works. There's like some people are fighting about praying. Yeah. Very profound. Yeah. Haven't even gone inside the building yet.
We don't need to. At this point, I don't think we need to.
I think we really need to stop because these batteries are all going to run out before we even get inside there. Okay, so you don't know what to expect, basically, do you?
No, I'm actually, I'm quite excited to get in there.
The last time I went to a museum was with Amber. Yeah. in the Louvre episode of your podcast, which was what, 2 years ago?
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's the last time I set
We need
foot
to
in a
get this.
museum.
Right, let's get in there then.
Okay.
Let's get in there. So I think we're probably going to need to. Before we go in, I'll need to switch this camera off and hide it because I don't know how they're going to feel it.
Yeah, no, just keep it recording, because then it's just one file that I can just send to him, as opposed to having to send him like 5 files.
Might as well keep it recording.
It records for like 9 hours, so you'll be all right. And now we can whisper things into the microphone, being like, "Oh, Luke's an arsehole, isn't he? Luke's a right prick, isn't he?"
Oi, I heard that. What shall I do with this camera? Shall I just kind of like put it in my bag, still recording, or
Or maybe you attach it to your belt and it's recording backwards.
I don't know. I don't know how stealthy we need to be about this.
Oh, we want to take all this stuff
Thank you very much. Bonjour, toi, ticket s'il vous plaît. Oh, she knows you. He's free to get in, right? Because he's.
You are the.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the.
Merci, c'est gentil.
Oui.
C'est ça.
Bonjour. Merci.
Okay, look, you're meant to go this way, but I think we should just go to the famous piece first, because let's go crazy.
Well, I mean, it already looks amazing.
So what's this that we can see out here?
Well, okay, so the museum's got like 3 parts to it. So it's got the original. It's got this part, which is like part of the Roman baths. So Paris they used to be Romans in Paris. They were living here in the 1st century, and they built baths. They built an arena. You might have been there.
No. You mean to perform?
No. It's just like.
I might have been there.
Well, it's in the...
I've heard of it. I've heard of Les Arènes de
There's a
Paris.
hen
Yeah.
with this. Okay, so it's got the arena, they had a temple and all this sort of stuff. And most of it's like gone, apart from the arena, and part of the baths. So these were like the Roman baths, so like this was Roman Paris. And then in the Middle Ages, they built this building, the old part that we saw when we were in the park, which was the Clooney order, built it for the monks who were coming to study, because Paris is a place of study for monks. And so it's basically halls of residence for the monks.
Okay.
And then they renovated the space and they built like a more modern part. So it's all sort of...
A combination of Roman, medieval and modern, all in one building.
Exactly.
And so the Romans used to have their baths in here.
Yeah, and the frigidarium is the cold bit.
Okay.
Or is it the hot bit? I can't remember.
Cold bit.
Cold bit,
yeah.
frigidarium.
I mean, it's the frigidaire in French means is a brand of fridge. That's why French people, old French people, say they'll say, can you put the food in the frigidaire in the fridge, because it was a brand of fridge.
Oh, I see. It's like in England we say, I'm going to use the Hoover, meaning vacuum cleaner.
Exactly.
So Kyle,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello.
It's the first time you've been on my podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So my listeners don't know you. They know these two quite well. Most of them do. So you're his brother.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
South of England.
Okay. And what do you do?
I play football
Professionally?
on occasion. Yeah. Although I'm on holiday,
Are you?
which is why I'm here. So, bit more alcohol, bit more food, bit less exercise.
Right. Yeah. Welcome to Paris.
Yeah.
He's basically living my life for a month. A bit more alcohol, a bit less exercise.
So you're a professional footballer.
Yeah.
Who do you play for?
Exeter.
Exeter. Okay. All right. How's your season been?
Yeah, turbulent.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were top of the league after I think it was 7 or 8 games. Then we didn't win a single game for about 3 months,
Oh God.
and then we went on a winning run again, and we finished about 12th.
12th.
Yeah, so
Which league is that?
League One.
Okay.
So we're about mid-table,
All right.
which
Safe.
yeah, considering the season we had was pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
what,
yeah.
What position do you play?
Anywhere in midfield, so centre midfield. I'd say.
Roving midfielder.
Yeah, roaming, but in League One you don't really get to roam. You don't have the luxury of that in our league. So yeah.
Goal scorer. Do you score goals?
Not really. I'm like the guy before the guy who sets up the goal.
Kind of like a Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, but probably not as good. Otherwise I wouldn't be playing for Exeter. So.
Right. Okay. Okay. We're nearly finished with the football bit. Okay.
No, I'm fascinated. I know nothing about this.
This is much more interesting.
Now we're gonna explore this in a minute, but I have to just kind of question you about playing football and stuff first. So, biggest opponent that you've ever faced
As a team or like
as a team first?
as a team?
Yeah.
Probably Man City when I was at Bournemouth.
Manchester City.
Yeah,
Really?
that was good. But I didn't actually get on the pitch, but I was there. So
Okay. Yeah. I see. What about in terms of one-to-one? For biggest opponent as a player that you've had to
as a player,
play against?
again, it'd probably have to be in training. So yeah, probably Nathan Ake was probably the best.
Nathan Ake.
Yeah,
Do you know who
good
that
player.
is?
He plays for Man City. No, he plays for Man City now. So he was at Bournemouth. So in training.
I see.
Yeah, I can't give you Steven Gerrard or any of that.
No.
Unfortunately.
You're too young for Steven Gerrard, aren't you?
Well, I'm too young for Steven Gerrard. Yeah. Well, who's the modern version? Jude Bellingham. Haven't played Jude Bellingham.
Bellingham. Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, speaking of this, they'd probably look at us kicking and chasing a ball round a field and think,
We mean the monks.
Maybe football was invented during the Middle
monks
Ages.
would look at us and go, huh? Well, yeah, there were people kicking inflated pigs' bladders around fields around this time, I think so.
I defer to you.
The history of football does go back to this time, maybe earlier, but they used to play it in villages, and it would basically be someone would basically just walk through the village, and they would knock on houses, and they would basically.
Football, according to Siri, was invented in 1174, so we're exactly in...
Bang in the medieval period.
What a transition.
This is our Venn diagram.
If I can just finish my little bit about medieval
Sorry.
football, what they would do is there'd be a village, right? And at one end of the village, this is a weird tangent. At one end of the village, they would put a goal, which was basically a kind of a hoop that was stuck in the ground, and then at the other side of the village there'd be another one, and then basically there would be a line drawn through the middle of the village. All the houses on this side were in that team, all the houses on that side were in the other team, and all the men basically would play the game. The entire village would play. It wasn't just 11 a side. The entire village would play. The ball was an inflated pig's bladder.
How did they inflate that? Through their mouth?
Don't ask.
It's probably in the normal way, I suppose so. And then they'd tie it up, like a balloon. And then it would just be like, right, kick off. And it would be a massive fight where...
Didn't lots of people die during it as well?
People would have got injured and stuff, yeah. There were no rules at all. It was basically just get that ball through that hoop through any means necessary, and it was just a huge scrap.
And what happened at the end when they got it through the hoop?
They all probably had a big feast and drank mead and sang jolly songs and and babies were conceived and things like that.
So there was, going back to Amber, there was fighting, there was praying, but there was also messing around.
A bit of football every now and then.
As soon as men get 5 seconds of free time, we figure out a way to dick around, don't we?
Let's kick this about. Yeah. Okay. Right, anyway, Amber, where are we?
Okay, so we are going backwards through the museum. I don't know if you're meant to start downstairs, but chronologically it starts downstairs, but we're going straight upstairs because we're going to go to the famous thing, which is here in the museum, and why everyone comes. It is the tapestry of the Lady and the Unicorn, and this is why all these poor students, these school kids are here, very sad, they're having to learn about it. So going backwards, so this is sort of the later end of the Middle Ages, but you can see everything is basically God. There's going to be a lot of church decorations. People didn't really have, only wealthy people could afford decorations, so most of the stuff we see is for churches, and they've got really weird things. You think of the Middle Ages as quite this sort of serious time, but there is some weird thing. Come with me, I'm just going to show you some weird things.
What when you say it's towards the end, what years are we talking about?
Sort of late 1400s,
late
1500s.
Okay.
So these are these little chairs that people can rest on when they're praying, but they've got kind of curious little engravings underneath. But this is the weirdest one. These are 2 naked children playing on those wooden horses that you do sometimes. Don't touch the
2
art.
naked children playing on sort of wooden hobby horses.
Hobby horses.
What was the obsession, just in general, with humans and naked children in the past?
This is a good question.
In all fountains, there's naked children peeing.
It's a bit disturbing.
It is a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
And do you know why people put these little
So you don't sit on it.
flowers? Oh, so you don't sit on
Yeah,
it.
because
Okay.
it means don't sit on it instead of a sign. But they've got cool. Anyway, I love this room because it's got cool mental little sculptures. Because loads of it's in wood. This is from Northern Europe, and so they've got loads of attention to detail. And I'll point out some details that is going to be painful for you boys. Very painful. Come with me.
What kind of painful details are you talking about?
I do. Although I do love Jesus on a donkey. He looks great.
Jesus on a donkey. Yeah, it's always nice to get a bit of Jesus on a donkey, isn't it?
I thought he was doing a peace sign then.
I thought the phrase was Christ on a bike. I didn't know it was Jesus on a donkey.
This might seem a little bit blasphemous or something to talk about this in the context that we're in. But when do people say, oh, Christ on a bike?
It's an expression of frustration, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you go, if you've made a nice fresh cup of tea and you've just spilt it everywhere, it would be...
Oh, Christ on a bike.
People would say, oh, shit, oh, merde, oh...
Christ on a bike.
I've never said that.
I've never said.
Well, my mum used to say it quite a lot because she's Irish.
She's from Northern Ireland. Oh, Christ on a bike.
She would say, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. That was her way of... yeah, anyway.
Anyway, that was Christ on a donkey.
Just for your pleasure. So I love all of these. I think they're crazy. But this does look like a particularly brutal circumcision.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so wait a minute. Audio listeners, what we're looking at is some a wooden carving. Three wooden carvings which appear to depict the circumcision of little boys.
Well, of Jesus.
It's Jesus, is it?
It's always Jesus.
So they've done it 3 times. This is Jesus getting circumcised.
Thrice.
They have to do it 3 times.
I think they're from different pieces.
They've got what look like tweezers that you would pick, that you would pluck out your hairs with, but much bigger.
Yeah.
And I mean, that looks horrific.
To be fair, no one is happy. No one's enjoying this, especially Jesus. To be circumcised, listeners. Kyle, do you want to explain?
You can say no. You can make Luke do it.
I mean, I'll probably turn that down, but
You can if you want.
Is there any listeners that won't know?
Yeah, I think, well, there's, out of the 99 that know, there's going to be one who doesn't. So we need to explain it just for that one person. I'll do it if you.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably better for you to do it. So
yeah, I'm a professional.
Yeah, you're a professional circumcision describer.
Whatever it is, I'll explain it. So circumcision is basically the act of removing the foreskin from the penis of a human child. I don't think it's done,
always child.
I don't think it's done to animals, is it?
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know either, really.
What?
I didn't know it was.
I mean, if
children.
we're going off on a tangent here, what's the purpose of it?
It's a covenant with God.
What? Removing the foreskin of the penis is a covenant with God. It's sort of like a legal contract with God.
With God, yes.
They couldn't just write a contract. They had to cut off the foreskin.
That's what he wanted.
That's what God wanted.
That's what God wants.
Okay.
He wants the skin of penises of little boys.
Apparently so.
Well, there'll be other reasons as well, like...
It's not for us to ask.
Okay.
God moves in mysterious ways, Paul.
It's a curious choice, but there it
There are
is.
probably other reasons, like it's probably something to do with hygiene.
Well, I think that's the current feeling.
But that would have been the reason in the past as well. They just combined it with a religious purpose as well. But yeah,
Listeners, let us know in the comments.
yeah, okay. Yeah, Anyway, Jesus on a donkey, Jesus getting circumcised. The things you see in these museums.
Weird. This is the weirdest of all the Jesuses. This is surely the weirdest little Jesus here.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is a tiny little wooden sort of carved statue of naked Jesus with golden flaxen hair. And he's got like a little sort of pot belly. Yeah. He appears to be holding, is that an apple in his left hand?
He's well fed.
Could be an apple, yeah.
Yeah, he's certainly been well fed. It looks like he's got an apple, and he's holding up his two fingers, not in a victory sign or something, but he's just holding up his two fingers like he's been playing cowboys and Indians.
Blessing.
Like, pew, 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 ha ha. He's very pink and fleshy.
That's what's weird about it, his pink fleshiness. Anyway, we're not here for this.
No.
We're never going to get through this museum at this rate, you lot.
Right, come on then.
Let's go to the star attraction.
So this is the unicorn.
Lady in the Unicorn.
Lady in the Unicorn. Ooh, we like unicorns, don't we? Everyone likes a unicorn.
Right.
Especially my daughter, she's obsessed.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Is your daughter obsessed?
Yeah, she's obsessed with unicorn.
Okay, we need to
whisper.
be quite discreet in here.
Yes. Okay. Let's get in here.
Okay, listeners, turn up your volume because we're going to be whispering.
Okay.
I'll try and raise the volume so that everyone can actually hear us. So, okay, who would like to try and explain what we're looking at? Paul Taylor.
Okay, we are in a room with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 enormous carpets.
Carpets?
Tapestries.
Tapestries.
And it looks like a lion.
Well,
a lion unicorn.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it's giving me British passport vibes.
Absolutely.
Because we, on the British passport, unbeknownst to many people who are not British, unbeknownst, thanks very much, is that we have a lion and a unicorn on our passports and some French writing, which says Dieu est mon droit, which means God and my right. Yeah, that's what we're seeing.
God and my right, which has been reduced somewhat since 2016.
Yeah.
God and my right to stand,
travel.
To stand in a big queue at the airport.
Yeah.
But anyway, how do you describe that? Is it like the royal crest?
It is, yeah, I think that's what it's
And you
called.
see a lion and a unicorn on the crest, but here we are.
It's the lion for England and the unicorn for Scotland, yeah.
The unicorn is Scotland's national animal.
No dragon to be seen anywhere.
No. Well, that's the Welsh dragon, yeah, but there's no dragon there.
Should be.
Poor Welsh.
What's interesting is on each, like on this one over here, there's a monkey.
Yeah.
On that one there's a little rabbit and a fox as well.
Fox.
There's lots of other animals.
Is that a
Just
dog?
Take a step back to see this. Okay, so can you give us a little bit of info about these tapestries, Amber?
Absolutely. I can tell you a little bit about these tapestries. I'll try to keep it short.
I expect the video is a bit dark at this
It
point.
might be a bit dark.
But that's all right.
Okay then, they keep it dark to protect them. So these tapestries, so these are the big attraction. Everyone loves to come and visit these tapestries. So they're sort of from the end of the 1400s, and they were discovered in this castle. Do you know who George Sand or Georges Sand? There's a French writer called George Sand. So she was staying in this castle, and these tapestries were on the wall, and she was like, wow, these are so beautiful. And her boyfriend was this guy who was working in French patrimoine. And so she told him about it, and long story short, they brought them back to Paris and they put them in here and they restored them. And there's been a lot of ink spilled about what the tapestries mean, but we'll just look at a few of the details to begin with. So when they got them back, they'd been up in this wall in this dusty old castle for absolute centuries, and it was very damp. And you can see the bottom of the tapestry is a lot lighter than the top of the tapestry.
The bottom is lighter than the top. Oh, I see. There's
discoloration.
Exactly. So you can see the top looks
lighter below, darker above. So they got damaged?
Well, they were really damaged on the bottom because of damp and being nibbled by rats and what have you. And so when they brought them back to Paris, they repaired them. But even though this was done in the Moyen Age, in the Middle Ages, they used this incredible natural dyes because, more colour is more money, really. Everyone... It costs a lot of money to dye stuff, and it's very difficult. It's also very smelly and disgusting. I can get into it if you want to. But when they came, and so they discovered it in the 1800s, so 19th century, they used more modern techniques to dye it. So now, this was done in the end of the 19th century, you can see that this has not lasted anywhere near as long. When it was first done, of course, it would have looked the same. It would have looked as red. But now this is fading away. So it's just testimony to how incredible the work was on this, that it was, it's over 500 years old and it's still looking really, really bright and amazing.
So to make something like this, are they weaving the material and it's all unicolor to start with, and then they go and paint it with the dyes?
No, that's a good question. So what they would have done, as far as I understand, is that have used a loom, and so a loom is you basically are threading the thread in and out, and each new colour you need a new thread. So they're tying, they're not sort of doing the background and then embroidering over the top. They're weaving on the loom. So you're going red, change your thread. Now you need a bit of green, change your thread.
So they're doing it as they're going along. It's not one colour and then they're dyeing it.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so something like this, one tapestry like this would have probably taken 4 people to work on, because you work, and they say that something like 1 metre squared is 1 month of work, or and they can only work, obviously it's the Middle Ages, they can only work in the daytime by sunlight. You can't use any flames, you can't work in the evening. So they consider if there was about 18 people working on all of these, it would have taken about 2 years to make.
Wow.
But and would have cost an absolute fortune, would have cost loads and loads of money. But when you want qualité, you get qualité, because look at it, it's still here.
I think that's the quote of this podcast. If you want qualité, spelt AY at the end. If you want qualité.
What was the quote again?
If you want qualité, you get qualité.
Well, it might as well be the tagline for this whole podcast. If you want qualité, you get qualité. Especially when the tailors are involved.
That's why he's a comedian. No, but it looks really, really amazing. In that respect, in terms of just how much it's lasted, and when you compare to more modern methods, how faded that looks, compared to it is really amazing.
What would
Paul's about to ask a very profound question.
What would be the point of this? Why back in the day would people create tapestries? What's the purpose?
There's a number of purposes. So we'll get into it now. So on one hand, it's decorative, so it looks nice. It's practical because it keeps your gigantic house a bit warmer. If you're covering the walls, they don't have lovely central heating, so it's kind of preserving the walls and making it a bit warmer. But this tapestry would have cost an absolute fortune. And so when people come into your home and they see this, it's money. It's like saying, I've got loads of money. Exactly. It's bling. It's like saying, look how much money I've got. I can afford this level of work, this level of colour, this level of like design, because something more simple or using, and red, I mean, you guys don't dye your hair, but red is a hard colour to keep, it fades, and it's still, I mean, it looks incredible. Obviously that's why the lights are a bit low, they're protecting the colours.
That's why we have to speak quietly as well. If you speak too loudly, it could affect
fade the colours. This is museum voice, okay?
Yeah.
But why but why did they get it done? It's a question of like who got it done. So who might want to like show off this much wealth?
Kings and queens.
Possibly.
Royalty.
Well, monks. Sorry, I said that too loudly. Monks.
Monks are not wealthy. Like
Mbappe.
if you went into someone's house, Mbappe.
Footballers.
Knights.
No, flashy people, footballers. Do you know what I mean? Like someone who's got money, but maybe that money's new money. Do you see what I'm saying? Like someone that's like come into money
Someone
and they're
wants
trying
show the world, hey, look at me.
I've got
money
loads
too.
of money. Exactly.
I might not be a king, but I've got
A pair of Yeezys.
Exactly.
I've got some tapestries.
Exactly. So the family that commissioned this are called Leviste, the family Leviste. And they're from Lyon. And as you pointed out, there is a lion, and Lyon and lion, that's that link there. And the unicorn has a link as well, because Leviste can mean fast, and unicorns are fast. And this is their family crest, the circles, the semi-moons. And some people think that they are to do with like sort of Islam, but that's actually just the family crest. So this is the family crest, and Lyon's famous for silk, and they're silk merchants, and they get loads of money. They become really, really wealthy, and they move to Paris, and the brothers start working for the king, so then they start getting important jobs. And in French history, there's this idea that you're a noblesse de la robe, of the dress, or de l'épée, of the sword. So you're either old money or new money, basically. You've earned your title from your job, like working as a minister or something like this, so from your clothes, or from being a knight, which is considered more old money and noble and important. And so here they're kind of trying to show that their money and their legitimacy, because look at this flagpole here where they've got their crest everywhere, so they're saying, look how important we are, our families here. But this flagpole is not a flagpole. It's exactly what you were talking about before we came in. It's a jousting pole. Yeah, you can see where you'd hold your hand, and at the top you can see the little sort of thing to poke your opponent off their horse. And so they're sort of saying, oh look, we're really legitimate, we've got all this money, look at our crest. And they're trying to link themselves with knights, with the chevalier, which was a very sort of noble and more elevated order than merchants and people that have earned their money in that way. So it's more hereditary money. So there's lots of these sort of symbols in there. Then, as to the tapestries themselves, so we won't get into too many of those details, the tapestries are famous because they show the 5 senses. So you've got the different senses. So each tapestry is meant to show a different sense. I'll see if you can work it out. So we can I'll start with it. Have a look around.
Let's look at this first one over here.
Oh, I was hoping you'd said the one on the right, but go on.
We'll come to that.
All right.
Which sense do you think this represents? It's always interesting that the unicorns are there. Like, where are these mythical creatures? Did they even exist? Anyway.
She's not eating anything.
She's not eating anything.
Well, eating isn't a sense, is it?
Is it? Is taste?
Yeah, taste.
Yeah, I guess so.
So
Yeah, all right.
that one would be taste.
That's taste. 'Cause
Absolutely, yeah.
She's got her hand in a bowl of peanuts or something.
Yeah.
Sugared almonds.
Some snacks over here.
Yes.
Some porridge.
And
Got a bit of porridge.
look, she's feeding that parrot that's escaped.
Oh, yeah.
We saw
That's
outside.
the parrot from earlier.
Yes.
It's the parakeet that we saw earlier
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So this one at the front then, it's touch, isn't it? Because she's touching the unicorn's horn.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's have a closer look at that.
Get in there.
So there she is. So who is she again?
So we don't know who she is. We can't say that she's a particular person from the family or whether she's just an allegorical figure. You said something that was interesting about unicorns. So at this period, people thought unicorns existed, which, I mean, there are weirder creatures out there.
What do you mean? They don't exist?
I hate to break it to you, Paul.
Sorry, mate.
Unicorns?
No, they don't. They're not real.
So why can you buy unicorn everything in shops?
Good question.
My daughter. Okay, I'm gonna have to tell my daughter that this afternoon then.
Don't tell her.
Yeah, don't really.
Don't tell her, don't.
Let her live in the fantasy. So they thought that unicorns existed, and why not? You know, the world was very much unexplored, and there were lots of weird creatures that they were finding, and like a horse with a horn, not that weird. But even then, there was this feeling that a unicorn had magical properties. And what they were normally finding was the narwhal tooth, you know, the tooth of the narwhal. Yes, exactly. And people thought they were unicorn horns, and they were very expensive. The weight of the tusk was worth 10 times its weight in gold. And, you know, they
Is that
thought...
one of them there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely, yeah.
There it is, a narwhal tusk.
Well, I would believe in unicorns if I saw that.
Okay, because that's why. Because I was.
And that's
gonna
why it's
say-
so long.
I was
So
going to
a
say.
narwhal is a kind of whale.
Yeah.
I was going to say because in each of the things, the unicorn's horns are way bigger than modern day.
Modern unicorns.
Yeah, modern unicorns. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Your modern unicorn has got a much more...
They cost 10 times their weight in gold. So if you've got a unicorn production factory going on, you want to try and cut costs, don't you?
What's the monkey and chains for?
Well, a lot of the animals represent different things. So you've got the rabbit, which is sort of fecundity and bounty, but also perhaps lust. And monkeys are often associated with more base feelings or sort of less sort of noble behaviour. And so the monkey's chained up here. There's a monkey in all of them, I think, or at least in most of them. You can see a little monkey.
Yeah.
In some of them he's free and some of them he's not.
So going back to the senses, this one represents touch.
Touch, yeah.
That one's taste.
Yes,
Right, let's keep going.
yes.
5 senses, but there's more than 5.
Ah, you're very right.
All right, so this one is, this maiden is holding some pretty flowers.
Smell?
Smell, exactly. Why does it smell?
Because flowers smell nice.
And we've got the little monkey smelling the flowers, and she's making a sort of little marigold ring, which is very sweet. And if you look carefully, I won't get into all the flowers because I'm not really very botanical. But this type of tapestry is called mille fleurs, which means 1,000 flowers, lots and lots of flowers. But you can see, particularly on this one, above her head, there's mint and other aromatic plants. So it's kind of giving this feeling of, smelling. We can smell that sense. This sense is very easy.
Sound? Hearing?
Sound. Yeah, absolutely. She's playing musical instruments, and you can see the unicorn and the lion look like they're listening in. You know, they're like leaning in to hear more. Yeah, exactly.
What is she playing? Some sort of interesting organ.
Yeah, you need 2 people to play. So she's sort of like blowing in the air behind. There's like bellows, and then she plays. It's kind of like a...
Pipe organ.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a bagpipe.
Kind of like bagpipes in the form of an organ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so that's a sort of medieval kind of instrument. And then the last one, also very easy to identify.
Sight.
In this one, we can see a maiden sitting with the unicorn, and she's holding a mirror, and the unicorn is admiring itself in the mirror. And so this is probably sight,
Yes, absolutely.
vision.
And just before we finish with the unicorns, there was a feeling that unicorns existed, so they thought unicorns were real. And the myth around unicorns was that a unicorn could only be tamed by a virgin. You know, you had to be a virgin,
of course.
to capture a unicorn. And the unicorn was sort of violent and aggressive towards men, and maybe non-virgins, but was very sort of like docile, exactly. And also the unicorn horn, as well as being useful, and it would protect you. If you ate it, it would protect you from poisoning, so like in Harry Potter, and was really sort of strong and protective. This one guy, he made like a sword, like the hilt of his sword out of unicorn horn, and he thought it would protect. It didn't protect him, but that's what he thought. And so linked in with that unicorn, well, let's look at the last sense, and then we can think more about unicorns.
So we did the 5 senses there.
We did the 5 senses, yeah, exactly.
So what's left here then is we see a maiden standing in front of a kind of tent, and there's another maiden, a young girl, holding a box of jewellery, and this maiden seems to be taking jewellery from the box.
There's an Ewok.
There's an Ewok there.
It's
from
a
Star
bichon.
Wars. It's a what?
It's a bichon.
A bichon, a little lap dog. Yes, it's like a little dog. It's not actually an Ewok, because they're not real, Paul, like unicorns.
Yeah, also not real.
So what's going on here then, Amber?
So This is the one that kind of, so they're quite pretty, you know, you like them or you don't, the tapestries, but this is the ones that kind of bring together everything, and also people are very, they're going to affect the colours. People are very like...
Needs to be careful of the tapestries.
Exactly. Keep your voice down, you're going to ruin the tapestries.
Don't blow your nose too loudly either, because you never know what could happen.
Blow off one of the flowers. So this one is the one that people are most confused about. So above it in French is written "Mon seul désir," my only desire. And the image is of a woman, not necessarily the same woman, but we could imagine the same woman, in front of this little tent. And this is a sort of little jousting tent. So again, it's that reminding people of knights and chivalry and all that kind of things, which the Leviste family had nothing to do with. They weren't from the knight class. And she's ambiguously either putting the jewellery back or taking the jewellery from it. So we're not sure whether she's putting her jewellery away, and the implication being my sole desire is, I don't know, something maybe more pure. I don't need, you know, all of these sensual pleasures of all of this, you know, I'm taking off my jewellery. It's like maybe something more humble or simple, or maybe she's taking the jewellery and she just wants to be covered in lots of jewels, you know, so there's an ambiguity to it. And there's lots and lots of like thoughts and ideas, and there's other ideas that maybe she's cut her hair and she's put it in the jewellery, you know, you give people jewellery, it's about love, and there's a duality to all the pieces, because within the idea of a unicorn is simultaneously purity, which is to do with they like virgins, but there's also something Christ-like about it. You know, Christ hangs out with a virgin, as we all know. You know, Christ protects you and saves you. You know, so the unicorn is symbolic of purity in this very feminine space, but is also could be seen as a Christian symbol, which of course then leads into renouncing jewels and leading a simple life. But it's not very straightforward. You know, there's lots of animals. All of the animals and the flowers do have different meanings, whether they're meaning purity or love, and the trees as well also have symbolic meanings, especially for people in the Middle Ages who know a lot about flowers, and you know, they've got no medicine. Everything comes from flowers, meaning and medicine and food. So it's a really sort of...
There's a lot going on here then, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. And just, yeah, as you said earlier, just amazing craftsmanship. Just an incredible level of skill involved in making these.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, really, really good. What do you reckon, Kyle?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, how you've extracted all of that from that is pretty amazing, really.
How do you know all this stuff, Amber?
Read it in a book, Luke. Yeah.
Oh, good work.
Just read it on the side of
Just
it.
read it.
It's
Written on the side.
Oh, right. Well, that's probably how you extract it.
That's how I extracted it. Exactly. Just read it in a book.
With size.
What always fascinates me about this kind of stuff, this is the uncultured version of me talking again, because you know, when I was at school and we were reading like Shakespeare in English literature class, and our English teacher was like, well, what do you think he meant by this phrase or this turn of phrase? And I always was like, what happens if he just felt like it?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything, you know. And I wonder, like, at some point, like when they're creating this, like there's two rabbits there, right? I wonder maybe what, you know, like maybe people are like extracting certain information. What happened to people making it? Like started making the rabbit, and the other guy was like, "No, you idiot! It was supposed to be a fox. Why have you made a second rabbit?" And it's too late, so they just end up making a second rabbit, and there's no meaning behind it at all.
Or it's like, well, look, I need something here. What do you think? Oh, you haven't got any rabbits on this one. All right, I'll just put a couple of rabbits down there then. You mean there wasn't maybe that much meaning?
Nowadays, like we want to extract so much out of everything that's old that sometimes maybe there's less meaning behind it than we think, but we like making. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Absolutely. That said, though, I mean, I think it's just a fun way to look at things. You know, if you're looking for the rabbits or the little lamb, or like, you know, you can see that hawk up there, and you can see that it's dressé, it's trained. You know, it's got a little string around its.
Oh, I thought it was a pigeon.
Around its leg. But
yeah, I see
it
what
does.
you mean.
It's giving pigeon. It looks like it's like attacking this other little bird. Like some of it is, I suppose, whatever, and some of it is deliberate. But like it's just a way to look at something or engage in something. And I think lots of art is meant to be a little bit meditative. Like you go and you just sort of look at it. And sometimes looking can be hard. I don't know how to go about looking, even though that sounds weird. So sometimes trying to find meaning can help you look.
I think that another way to think of it as when some work like this has been done, which has been done, is obviously very expensive, very time consuming. It's been commissioned in a very serious way. It would have been planned out in advance. The person who did it would have been meticulous and sort of like highly skilled, that probably every decision probably did have significance. You know, when something has been so carefully thought through, it's like you think about the films of Stanley Kubrick or something, someone who was incredibly meticulous, who planned his films out in advance, where nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens at all by accident. Everything is planned. Everything is put in for a specific reason. Then maybe.
But sometimes you get a Starbucks coffee cup in the middle of a Game of Thrones episode.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like, oh shit, we forgot to take the Starbucks coffee cup out. And it's just but then, maybe 1,000 years from now, people will watch that episode and try and extract, is it a meaning of society right now? Were they trying to, do you know what I mean? Somebody might extract now that we've got written proof that it was just a mistake, that won't be happening. But because we don't know, not the people that made this are not around to tell us.
This is the sort of mystery of history. This is the mystery of history and of human civilization. The
mystery of history and quality.
To an extent, some things we just don't know.
No.
So we interpret and we try to work things out and. We do,
And then we disagree about the interpretation, and then we fight to the death about it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
As humans, isn't it?
Yeah.
Should you see some more bits?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Come on then. Others will stay here with the lady and the unicorn all day. You can't be looking at everything, Luke.
We can't stop and look at everything.
We can't stop and look at everything.
More tapestries.
More tapestries. We're very familiar now with the millefeuille style. Yes, exactly.
Nice medieval chess set.
You can see that this is part of the old house. You can see the lovely beams. So these are the kind of everyday bits and bobs, and there's some real treats in there. Come, I'm going to show you the knights, the shining armour. Oh, good. French people's favourite. Look, they're making the wine.
Tapestry about making wine.
Tapestry about making wine.
Yeah, and they just that's the thing. They just stamp on the grapes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope he cleaned his feet.
He doesn't look very clean, does he?
I'm not sure.
Because that's not a modern day thing anymore, is it? But when they have festivals in the streets, they just stamp on the grapes. It's like a celebration.
Is it not still the best way to make wine?
I don't know. Look at that horse eating the grapes. I love that. That's my favourite bit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he doesn't look very happy. He's like, can someone else do this? I'm fed up with this. My feet are soaking wet. Yeah.
It looks like he's making hard. It looks like he's actually sat on it.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. And he's like, look, mate, don't sit on the grapes. No, you got to stamp on them. I don't want to stamp on them. My feet are all wet. Can I sit down? Why can't I sit on them?
I mean, there's got to be an easier way of carrying it than that as well. You couldn't make that more uncomfortable if you tried.
Use your other arm.
Imagine how sore your neck would be.
Yeah. Oh, well, they didn't know a lot in those days. They knew some things. Anyway, look, Paul and Amber will be talking without us. Okay.
Oh, look. We weren't. I was like, we should have a side conversation, and it really mess up your audio.
Okay, look, armour.
There's not much night stuff here, but here is some night stuff. Night-themed bits and bobs.
So, listeners, we are now in a new room, and in front of us, behind a glass screen, there are various artefacts that look like weapons, armour, shields, helmets, swords, and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Right then, Amber, what's going on here then?
Well, the thing is, I think we're quite familiar with all this stuff, but it is really incredible to look at that and think this is what's protecting you. I mean, you've gone off to war. Knights are chevalier, so they have to have a horse, is more clear in French.
It is more.
Chevalier means horses, sort of.
A horse, cheval is horse, and so a chevalier has to have a horse. But they provided their own horse, their own equipment, all their stuff. And so that's why knights were wealthy. They had to be independently wealthy, and so it was quite this sort of important class of people. They weren't the foot soldiers. So here's just some some stuff, and you'd imagine, you're not surprised, like here's obviously St George defeating the dragon. He's like the patron saint of knights.
We can see this has been sort of painted onto the front of this shield, an image of St George defeating a dragon. He's the patron saint of England, although where was St George from actually? He was like Portuguese or something like that, I don't know.
These swords, like, it's unbelievable that they were able to create this stuff.
Yeah, the craftsmanship is impressive.
It's a bit menacing, isn't it?
Yeah. If someone came at you with one of them, what would you do?
Would you even see them? I mean, like...
Yeah, if you're wearing one of these helmets where all you're looking through is like a little slit.
So, I mean, these look in pretty good condition. So would these have not seen any battles, or would they have restored them? I mean, because some of them have like marks that look like it would have. I mean, that looks like a sword might have.
Either someone's had a go at it with a sword, or it's fallen over.
That's what I mean, but they look.
Yeah, well, I suppose the ones which are completely destroyed are just lost forever, and some of them are here. When you're thinking about knights and conflicts in the Middle Ages, you've got the Crusades, so that's the, terrible war. I'm sure you know all about that. So you've got the Crusades. I'm sure Paul knows all about the Crusades.
Yeah, I just thought we'd stay quiet for that bit.
Isn't that a holiday spot somewhere in America? I'm confusing it with the Palisades.
Maybe, yes.
Maybe, I don't know.
Have you not played the what's that series of computer games?
Assassin's
Creed. Did you not play Assassin's Creed? Yeah. A lot of climbing up tall towers and then jumping off into piles of hay.
Absolutely.
A lot of medieval jumping and climbing.
Well, the Crusades was a sort of Christian objective to go and reclaim Jerusalem for Christianity. And they had 9, 10, 11, loads of them. They didn't work, basically, and lots of people were killed there and on the way. And so you've got the Crusades, so that's what knights are doing. And of course, between France and England, you've got the 100 Years' War. Yeah, exactly. That England won, I'd like to say.
Come on, England.
But also lost. But you have the 100 Years' War, so this is what people are wearing. And then and we talked about Shakespeare earlier, and he talks about Henry V. That's the 100 Years' War. That's the Battle of Agincourt, where the British really sort of beat the French. It's one of the big famous battles. The rest are very boring, but it was a sort of pointless affair, really. Anyway, this is what they'd been wearing, sort of thing.
Look at that thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's a helmet with a kind of face covering with what looks like a big pointy beak full of holes so you can breathe, but you can only see through tiny little slits. You can barely see anything. It's like worse than being a stormtrooper from Star Wars.
But if you're on a horse, have you ridden a horse? I mean, you're jiggling around quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I guess if someone jousts you in the face, you've got more chance.
Absolutely.
The sword or the joust or whatever is going to glance off. Yeah.
Well, that's how Henry II died. He got a jousting stick in his eye, splintered off into his eye. He died.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
The two tapestries, very just quickly, he's off. This is called Off to the Hunt. Look, they're going off to the hunt. They've got their birds and their horses, and everyone's looking very jolly, and their dogs. And here they are, back from the hunt. And he's giving this woman a rabbit, a hare. She doesn't look very happy about it, does she?
She's like, look, I've got this hare. Sorry, it's not a very fat one. Or he's like, I don't like you, but I'm going to give you a hare anyway, because this guy told me to.
But, it's decorative, but it's also talking. People loved hunting. So if you've got, your hunting lodge and you want to decorate it, you're going to use tapestries like this. Right, come round here. This way.
Completely lost. I feel like that's the way we went. Oh,
We came through there, but we didn't come through here. Okay, we're now moving into another room, listeners, where there are some statues, a bit of stained glass. Amber is leading us further into the museum.
Sounds like medieval floors.
Sorry?
Sounds like medieval floors.
Yeah, the floor is very squeaky. These wooden floorboards are squeaking under our feet. And so Amber has brought us to... yes, what can we see here?
Well, it's called... Oh, no, I can't say it.
Opening Madonna.
Oh yeah, because
Opening Madonna or Shrine Madonna.
So Kyle, you don't know this, but Amber has got a weakness, and that is the word "open" because she can't say it.
Can't say it. No.
I've got opening.
She goes open.
Open.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
You have to really concentrate on it.
You've done it.
Okay. You want to go, there's two.
I'm just going to show you a few things in the museum because otherwise we'll die. We'll be too tired. But this is just such an unusual little thing. So it's a little shrine. So when it closes, on one side you've got the baby Jesus, on the other side you've got the Virgin. She's holding an apple. So symbolically, you know, she's kind of reclaiming apples for women, isn't she? But inside,
You mean after what Eve did?
Yeah, she's like, it's okay now. We can eat apples again. But inside they've got this little, they're missing the Holy Spirit, but they've got God and Jesus on the cross. But rather charmingly, you can take Jesus off, like for Good Friday, you know, when he's risen. So you like open it up and everyone's there praying, and you can sort of like add things or take things.
Really, it's like a
little
Polly
dolls.
It's like a Polly Pocket.
Yes. It's
That's very.
bonkers.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, poor little baby.
Poor little baby.
That's a sad story, isn't it? So we're looking at a statue of
Virgin and child.
Virgin and Child. It's the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus, but clearly something happened to this statue, and Jesus' head got knocked off, which is a pity. And Mary does look quite sad, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. Poor baby Jesus.
Poor Mary, poor Jesus, baby Jesus there. Obviously, it's just an accident. This is what, Amber?
This is for you.
This is for me.
This is for Paul.
Okay, so they love ivory, and like it's all so tiny. Like if we're not going to look at all the ivories, but like I mean, the remarkable detail is just so incredible.
Ivory, by the
How do you
way.
even carve ivory? What do you carve it with?
Sharp little knife, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and some of them are so tiny, and these stories, and you know, they're always the same stories, aren't they? There's religious stories because they've been commissioned by the church. But this one is my favourite, and I saw it and I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on?
So this is ivory carvings. Ivory being it comes from elephants' tusks. Right? Is that it? Is that it, or is it from Wales as well?
Mainly from elephants.
Elephant tusks.
How do they
Okay.
turn it into a flat?
So we've got these ivory plates, these square rectangular ivory plates with these very small, detailed little carvings in them that appear to tell little stories. So Amber, go ahead.
So I like this one because it looks great, and you can, with the Christian stories, you can recognise everyone because you know it's like the Virgin with the baby Jesus, etc., etc. But then other people are less known. So this is Saint Peter, and we recognise him because he's crucified upside down.
Okay.
Next to him is Saint Paul. I'm sure you know the story of Saint Paul.
I know nothing about St. Paul. I know there's a cathedral in London named after him, but I don't know what he did.
Well, St. Paul. So St. Paul, he's not like St. Luke, who's around the time of Jesus. He's later. And so basically, Paul is he's Jewish, obviously, and he doesn't believe in the Christians. He thinks they're all nonsense, and so he goes around persecuting them and like stoning St. Stephen to
Right.
death.
So Paul is the one who changes his name, right?
Yeah, well, he was Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he was like a baddie who became a goodie. He was a bit like sort of
Depends
Boba
what
Fett
side
or
of
something.
Depends what side of the story you're on. I
Okay.
suppose.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Anyway, so he's off to Damascus when he's struck by the light of the Lord and blinded. And look at that delicious image of him being struck on his way to Damascus and falling off of his horse.
So we can see a carving of Paul falling off a horse
Yes.
while being struck by lightning.
Yeah. Well, the light.
And it's like, whoa! Oh, it's light. It's just
Light.
sunlight. A ray of sunlight has come down,
that's-
blinded the horse maybe, and whoa! And he's fallen off. Oh,
A ray of sunlight hits me.
you get converted to Christianity
I combust straight away. I just turn into.
because you're ginger. A bit ginger. Yeah, me too.
Basically,
Yeah.
got no defense against the sun.
If I was riding to Damascus on a horse in full daylight, I would probably fall off as well. Because
Well, it
again,
depends where you're-
same reason.
Where you're travelling from. If you're travelling from London, yeah, I mean,
I
it's
wouldn't
quite a
make
long
it.
way.
Yeah, I'd get hit by sunstroke and would fall off, and I might convert to Christianity as well in those conditions.
Well, it works for Paul. He becomes a Christian and then becomes so into it that in the next scene, of all the moments they've chosen to tell, and to be fair, I don't know the story very well, so I didn't want to delve in anymore. Can you see this? He's preaching, and it's so boring that child has fallen out the window.
Oh my God. So Paul is preaching, and a child is falling out of a window.
On top of another child?
I think that's him later.
Oh,
It's like-
okay.
He dies.
Oh, he falls out the window and dies
It's
because
so boring.
it's so boring.
So long.
Is that genuine?
It's like me and my stand-up. It's so boring that people fall off and just die.
It's not you that dies, it's the audience that
Yeah, it's like people
Throwing
listening to my
themselves out
podcasts. It's the same thing. It's like people.
Somebody listen to the introduction of your podcast. They're like, we get it. We get the intro.
That's
Keep going.
right. That's basically that's like if I asked Microsoft Copilot to create an image of listeners falling asleep while listening to my podcast. Yeah, it would be St. Paul preaching and a child falling out of a window and then collapsing on the floor. Wow.
He saves the child. He's able to resuscitate.
He saves the child, so it's a happy ending.
I
Okay.
mean, that was so funny. Anyway, the rest is just St. Denis, but I particularly like this one. You can see here they're about to flagellate. So they're going to sort of whip St. Denis, and in the description it just says flagellation of St. Denis brackets bottom, and it means it's the bottom picture.
Right. Yeah. Where does it say that again?
Flagellating his bottom.
Yeah. Where's that saying? The flagellation of Saint Denis of Saint Denis brackets bottom, meaning the bottom picture. But he is actually being flagellated on the bottom as well. Perfect.
If anyone decides to come here, visit that.
Yeah, visit there's some good jokes in the description of this. Yes. Oh, look, a winding staircase. Okay, here we go. Whoa, steady on there, Kyle. You wouldn't want to get injured. You've got to look after those legs. Exeter City depends on you. Yum. Oh, this is more like it. Natural light.
the other side of the wall. This is it. We're just having a quick look.
So this is basically the courtyard.
This is just the courtyard, because remember it was built for monks. So
Were we just over
we
there?
were just on the other side.
We're on the other side of this wall in the garden.
You see this lovely view. It's really nice.
Okay,
Got all the
yeah.
sort of symbols of the Cluniac
Some
order.
interesting gargoyles sticking out of the wall. There's one here as well.
Yeah.
Look at this guy. I suppose that water would come pouring out of this guy's mouth. I'm looking at a gargoyle next to a well. All right. All right. So that's the end of this little visit to the Clooney Museum. Why is it called Clooney?
It was the Cluniac order that built the.
That's the name of the monks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Amber.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed that.
We'll do it again in 2 years. Drag
Yeah.
Paul to another museum.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's good. We did learn some stuff. Yeah, thanks.
Great.
It was good.
Nice one. Let's go and have some lunch.
Subscribe and like.
Yeah.
And all of the things.
Smash that like button.
If you're listening to the podcast, leave Luke a 5-star review.
Thank you. All right. So everyone, there we have it. That was our trip to the Medieval Museum. And I really hope you enjoyed joining us for that one, and that you were able to kind of keep up with what was happening and understand what we were saying. I told you, didn't I, that the audio went wrong somewhere about an hour into our trip. Several microphones died. I don't know if it's because they ran out of batteries or if because they accidentally got switched off in all of the excitement. I don't know what happened, but the audio quality went a bit wrong. I did actually record a lot more. There was more. We visited other parts of the museum, rambled on about other things as well, but they weren't really usable, those pieces, so you're just going to have to, I don't know, just imagine, leave the rest up to your imagination. But I think in the end, the final result from this recording was good, even if it did take me, the best part of 9 months to get it all together. I look forward to reading your comments. Please do leave some comments with your responses. I'm sure that you must have had some thoughts in your head while you were watching this episode. So what kind of stuff did you think while you were, enjoying this? Assuming you did enjoy it. If you didn't enjoy it, then that's a pity, but I hope that you did. So leave your comments. What did you find interesting? Was there something in particular that you found interesting? What was a highlight for you? Which things did you learn? Did you learn anything from this? I hope so. What things would you like to know more about? Okay, leave your comments. What was your favourite random or funny moment in this episode? Here are some things that you could mention on that. You could mention the moment where we had to whisper in order to protect the tapestries. They had to turn down the lights, but also for some reason everyone started whispering in that room. How about the incredibly loud parakeet outside the museum, the little green parrot that was insanely loud? How about Jesus on a donkey, or Christ on a bike, in fact? The circumcision of Jesus? I don't know if that would be a highlight for you. If that's the thing you enjoyed the most from the episode, then that could be a bit of a problem. So it's probably best to just move on from that, isn't it? What did you think about the lady and the unicorn? I know that you might have wanted to get a much clearer view of those tapestries. It was actually very difficult to do with the camera that I had, but yeah, maybe I could have stood still and just given you a proper look. But you can Google that. You could Google the lady and the unicorn tapestries, and you can see images of them. If you want to have a really good look and study the details, you could do that. But what did you think of the symbolism of the lady and the unicorn? What about the armour and weapons of medieval knights? You can just imagine guys trying to fight each other, wearing all this armour, trying to knock each other off horses with their jousts and everything. How about the miserable guy having to crush grapes with his bare feet? What about that child falling out of a window because it was so bored by listening to us? And did you catch that moment where a man blew his nose incredibly loudly in that quiet room with the tapestries? A man blew his nose. It was like an explosion going off, and it stopped all of us in our tracks. He interrupted us by loudly blowing his nose in front of the tapestries, not on the tapestry, thankfully. What about Kyle nearly falling on the stairs? Did you see that moment? Imagine if he'd fallen and injured his leg. The future of Exeter Football Club would have been in jeopardy. What about the short medieval history of football, the lesson about medieval football during feudal times, and simply the pure ASMR magic of Amber whispering about history in front of some priceless tapestries of unicorns? Or maybe something else. Let us know in the comments section which bit you enjoyed, and I look forward to your comments. Maybe if you want to prove that you made it all the way through, you could write something like this. You could write, if you want qualité, you get qualité, to quote Amber in this episode. Obviously, normally it's pronounced quality, but if you want qualité, you get qualité, Yeah, okay. The audio version of this episode, so I normally publish all my episodes, there's a video version on YouTube and then there's an audio version, and normally they are more or less the same thing. But this time the audio version of this episode is a bit different because I had to make some changes, because obviously there were visual elements in this that weren't included in the audio bit. So I had to cut out some of the visual bits, but actually added in a lot more. So I think the audio version is probably a bit longer than this one, than the video version. I added quite a lot of explanations and extra content about medieval times and the Renaissance, so some more history stuff in the audio version. So you could listen to the audio version, Luke's English Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Listen to the audio version of this episode for a different experience. And so we're nearly finished. I thought that finally, though, since this was an episode about history, European history, of course it's globally what was going on in all the rest of the world at this time. You could write about that if you want to, but I thought that since this was a history-based episode, that I could give a final bit of history, a final history lesson here, just to put the whole thing in context, because history can be a tricky, slippery thing to get to grips with, and so I thought that I could at least summarise some of the main historical periods in Europe over the last 2,000 years, and the kind of words that we use to describe those periods, just to put this in context. We talked about this period as the Middle Ages. It's because it's the middle of that sort of 2,000-year period of history, right? So if we start with the Roman Empire, the predominant aspect of European history about 2,000 years ago was the Roman Empire, which stretches from around the year 27 before Christ to around about the year 500 of the Common Era, 476. This was the height of the Roman civilization, marked by vast territorial expansion by the Romans, advanced engineering, law and culture. The empire eventually declined due to corruption, which is very prescient considering what's going on today. God. Economic troubles and invasions. So the Roman Empire, until around about the year 500, technically I think it's officially the year 476. I'm not sure exactly what it was that happened there, but it must have been the dissolution of the Roman Empire officially. Then we get the early Middle Ages, otherwise known as the Dark Ages, from around that time to around the year 1000. Following the fall of Rome, Europe fragmented into smaller kingdoms and feudalism emerged. This was the system of there being a kind of king, let's say, or a lord who owned land, and then everyone else basically lived on and worked on that land, and almost like the people on the land were owned by this lord or by this king as well. So basic feudalism. And the Catholic Church gained immense power. Vikings as well were going around doing Viking things, raiding and, pillaging, and barbarian invasions as well were common during this time. Then we've got the High Middle Ages from about the year 1000 to about the year 1300. This was a period of economic growth. A lot of the stuff in this episode was based around this period. Population expansion, the rise of medieval kingdoms, the Crusades, which were mentioned in this episode, Gothic architecture, the foundation of universities. These were characteristics of this era. And then the late Middle Ages from around 1300 to 1500, more or less. This period was marked by plagues, notably the Black Death. A plague is a horrible disease that spreads among people. The Black Death was the most famous one, the bubonic plague, horrendous, killing millions of people in Europe. So plagues and wars, including the 100 Years' War between England and France, and social upheaval weakened the feudal system. And the Renaissance began in Italy, sparking a cultural and intellectual revival from around about the year 1400 to around the year 1600. This was a rebirth of art, science and humanism, inspired by classical antiquity, the cultures of Rome and Greece. Amber talked about the Renaissance at some point during this episode, contextualizing the move from medievalism into the Renaissance. Rebirth of art, science and humanism inspired by classical antiquity. Major figures included Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, the artists. The printing press was invented around this time, which revolutionized knowledge, allowing the spoken word to be printed. Mass communication, the first form of mass media. Then we end up with the Reformation, and then religious wars. This is around 1500 to about 1650. The Reformation. This was Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation. That's Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. He's another character from modern American history, much more recent. But Martin Luther was responsible for the Reformation of the church and Protestantism, which challenged the authority of Catholicism, leading to terrible religious conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants, including the 30 Years' War and all sorts of trouble in England. The Age of Exploration came next, which sort of was around this time up until around the 18th century, 1700. European nations, led by Spain and Portugal, expanded overseas, establishing colonies in the Americas, Africa and Asia. Then the Enlightenment and Scientific Revolution, which pressed up to around about the 19th century, around the year 1800. Philosophers like Voltaire and Locke promoted reason, democracy and human rights. Scientific discoveries by Newton and Galileo reshaped knowledge and changed the world. Then, following that, the Industrial Revolution, from around the mid-18th century, that's about 1750, to around about the true modern era, the turn of the century, around about the year 1900. The Industrial Revolution was marked by mass production, urbanization, technological advances all across Europe, changing the way that people live, the rise of industrial cities. Empires, fueled by the power of the Industrial Revolution, expanded. Capitalism flourished. The world changed so much during that period. Then, in the first part of the last century, we're talking about 1900 to around about the end of World War II. That early part, that first half of the 20th century was, of course, marked by the World Wars. World War I from 1914 to 1980 and World War II, 1939 to 1945, devastated Europe and much of the rest of the world, leading to the fall of monarchies, the Holocaust, and then eventually the Cold War divide. Then we ended up with, from around about the end of the war, from the end of World War II until the very early 90s, the Cold War and European integration were what marked that period largely. Europe split between the capitalist West and the communist East. NATO and the European Economic Community, otherwise known later as the European Union, they both emerged as important entities. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 marked the end of the Cold War. And then we get modern Europe, or even postmodern Europe, which is more or less 1991 until the present day. The EU expanded, globalization increased, the technology advanced, and then recent challenges include economic crises, Brexit, and geopolitical tensions, not to mention the looming threat of the climate emergency. That was a bit of a whirlwind tour of European history. I thought I would just give you that at the end, just to give you a bit of context for all of this. Thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. As I said before, leave your comments in the comments section. I would love to know what you thought about this and what was swirling around inside your head while you were enjoying the experience. And remember, if you want qualité, you get qualité. Thanks for watching. Speak to you next time. Goodbye. Bye. 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 Bye.